Welcome, everyone. Happy Friday, everybody. So fun to see so many familiar faces and some new ones for this unique way to start the weekend with you all. So welcome, welcome. And I'm sure a few more will be joining us. That's how LA rolls. Over the next few minutes, people will trickle in. But I'm James, the co-founder of Magic Mind, as well as the co-founder of the Venice Vedanta Club, and one of the co-founders, Reva, here as well, if you want to give an intro.
My name is Reva. James introduced me to Vedanta 3 years ago. Now we have this amazing community. Talked about the idea of starting a philosophy club. It's grown significantly. It's one of my favorite parts of life is engaging with the community twice a month, and now we're here to talk philosophy.
Yes. Before we jump in, I would love to, and this is a tradition of Venice Vedanta Club, which Mike, who's here, coined this term. Venice Vedanta Club is just this group of folks meeting on a Friday morning, once a month, the first Friday of each month, talking timeless philosophy. And it's a space, what's so beautiful, Aldous Huxley called this ancient Indian philosophy of Vedanta, he called it the perennial philosophy. And wrote the book called The Perennial Philosophy. That is one of his most famous books that he wrote about how this wisdom just comes up again and again and again and again and again and again and again. And all the major world traditions to perhaps the most famous Western philosophical concept of Plato's Allegory of the Cave, or Socrates' Allegory of the Cave. Plato most likely was the originator of that concept and attributed it to Socrates. And from the Allegory of the Cave to The Matrix, I saw someone wearing a t-shirt the other day that said, "The Matrix is a documentary." and I was like, that is so genius. We see these concepts come up over and over and over again. But what is also beautiful is it's a space every first Friday of the month for any and all philosophical conversations. So we've got a few different questions that we'll bat back and forth, and then we will get to open it up with open Q&A with the group. But I highly encourage you all to the person to your left or right, if you know them or not, what is so beautiful is carving out time to discuss the timeless, whether it's St. Augustine, whether it's Plato, whether it's Vedanta, whether it could literally be just something you heard the other day that really stopped you in your tracks. Jot it down and find some time to discuss it with friends, because it's through that discussion, through that reflection, that it goes from something that stops you in your tracks on a Thursday morning on Instagram to something that really sinks in and maybe transforms your life a little bit. But before we dive into these questions and then the public Q&A, I'd love to kick it off like we always do with the smaller groups before it started to get this big, which is just taking a moment to fully arrive here. Because we live in a world where we're always going to the next thing, and finding parking, and then getting a seat, and thinking about what's coming up after that, but rarely giving ourselves a moment to just arrive. So maybe, and as a little philosophy club, we would do it with our eyes closed, but everybody can kind of do it however you'd like. But Raven and I will perhaps kick this off with just 20, 30 seconds of just fully arriving where we are. And I'll invite you to join us if you'd like, in your own way. right. There might not be anything more powerful that we could communicate this morning than the power of stillness that at least I got to indulge in there for about 30 seconds. So powerful and so free to tap into at any moment. All right, Reva, how you feeling this morning?
I feel great, and I am very excited to ask you some questions today.
Well, let's
Been
jump
thinking
right
about
in.
these.
What's that?
My first one, maybe my favorite one.
All right.
So, Swamiji, who is the author of Vedanta Treatise, and maybe it's helpful to give a little background on Swamiji.
Sure, yeah, go for it.
Yep. Or it's asking you, as he was probably your introduction to Vedanta 10
Why don't
years
you
ago.
give a little
Right,
background on
Swamiji,
it?
who I've been fortunate to meet twice in India, is the author of Vedanta Treatise, one of the most thoughtful, at the forefront leaders and intellectual writers and teachers of this philosophy. He is 97 years old now.
97, yeah.
97 years old. So in a sense, he is our guru. He's been a teacher to so many students of this philosophy. He has an ashram in India, outside of Mumbai. Something so interesting about Swamiji when you meet him in person is, of course, he's larger than life in a sense of his energy is just transformative. Even in 5 minutes, you can feel it. For decades, he has gotten up at 4 a.m. every day. And from 4 to 6 is studying, reflecting, and writing so many of these books and texts on Vedanta. At the same time, there's this anecdote where later in the day, he'll watch Animal Planet.
Yes, this is one of my favorite stories, yeah.
Multiple episodes of Animal Planet. And when you see this juxtaposition of this discipline of like 4 to 6 a.m. every day for decades, with also saying this guru, this, Swamiji is watching Animal Planet. My question for you, James, is what is the equivalent of the Animal Planet for you? And then secondly, why is it this philosophy, it's not incompatible to watch television during the day? It's actually recommended.
Yeah, 4 episodes. They watched like 2 straight hours. Yeah. And the reason I love that story, so in the West, we have this conniption about this term guru. Guru means dispeller of darkness. That's the Sanskrit background of the word guru. And so in the literal sense, it just means someone that sheds light on a subject. But in a cultural sense, in the East, it also means someone that you say, okay, I think out of all of the teachers, you're the one that can shed the most light on the topics that mean the most to me. And there's a devotional aspect to a teacher in that respect, in that regard, in the East that we don't really have in the West. The goal in the West is to draft off of a teacher and then to surpass them. To draft off them, gain what you can, capture as much value from them, and then, like a miner takes to a mine, extract and then go elsewhere. Versus perhaps an agriculturalist would say, wow, this is fertile ground. And there's a lot of it right here. Well, I'm going to plant my farm right here. And I'm not extracting. I'm going to make sure I'm taking care of this relationship. The teacher-student relationship, the community relationship, because 20 years from now, I'm going to need it to still provide sustenance. And it's very different. It's a very different approach of agricultural approach, farmer versus the miner. And one of the aspects that's so interesting about a philosophical teacher that can, and especially at the stature of someone like our teacher Swami Parthasarathi, the Swami just means teacher as well, Swamiji for short, is his mastery of this of this philosophy that is often called a manual for living. So this philosophy of Vedanta goes back to the 4 Vedas, the 4 oldest textbooks, philosophical textbooks in the world, upon which nearly all Eastern philosophy comes from, these 4 textbooks, the Vedas. And this philosophy has had many names throughout history. And in the last 70, 80 years, it's kind of focused on this name of Vedanta. It just means into the Vedas. Another name for it is Upanishads. Another name for it is Sanatana Dharma. But in the last 70 years or so, it's kind of it's somewhat coalesced around this name, Vedanta, into the Vedas. That's where the Upanishads actually sit. You have, as we noted a month ago, you have folks like Emerson, Thoreau, that studied it daily. They called it the wisdom of the Gita, the Bhagavad Gita, which is one of the texts that you could study within this philosophy. And then you have Aldous Huxley that studied the Upanishads, Schopenhauer that said the Upanishads are the height of human thought. You have Nietzsche that said, once he read the Upanishads, Nietzsche said, it seems like Plato spent merely a lunch conversation with a sadhu. Basically saying God, it seems like Plato's getting all of these ideas from the East and kind of perhaps giving a carbon copy instead of the real thing. But when you spend time with someone that has spent 60 years, like Swamiji, 60 years in mastering this philosophy, it is so fascinating, to get to your question, it's so fascinating to see all of these little aspects, because this is a manual for living. It's not just like a physics discipline and then the physics teacher leaves the classroom, you go to lunch, and there's a completely different application of a different set of rules or laws or approaches to life. This is like you leave the classroom and then you really see how it gets applied. And I love that he watches Animal Planet He watches, you know what's just as great? Is he's seen John Wick probably 40 times. And the reason I love that is because it's showing you how to live in all these aspects, from the timeless concepts like wisdom is the capacity to see the end in the beginning, or love is seeing no otherness in the world, or attach you lose, detach you gain, or that which is like poison in the beginning is like nectar in the end, that which is like nectar in the beginning is like poison in the end. These are all timeless concepts, principles within Vedanta. Or it's in the afternoon, chill. It's not the American-centric, especially kind of maybe LA, or we both spent over a decade in kind of the Silicon Valley approach to life and living up in SF for a decade. It's like you can't watch Animal Planet for 2 hours in the afternoon. That's like you might as well be going 100 miles an hour down the highway. Like, it feels that wrong. And yet it's so awesome to have this teacher that's providing this wisdom on approach to life, not just say, but live it out of like, dude, we're watching Animal Planet. We're just chilling this afternoon. Or we're watching Turn On John Wick. And he'll get excited about turning it on for the 40th time, as if he's seeing it for the first time at 97 years old. And it ties to this principle we've talked about of take the mind for a walk. Rest the mind. The mind is like a 5-year-old child. The intellect is the adult in the room, the mind. We have 2 inner equipments within this philosophy. It outlines that we have 2 inner equipments, not just one. So you have a mind and intellect. Sometimes you just got to let the 5-year-old child go to recess, go wild. And for Swami or for myself, it's find something healthy, but it's take it for a walk. Mine is, I love YouTube. I love YouTube. YouTube's phenomenal for going deep, and sometimes it's philosophy, and I'm entertaining myself with watching more philosophy. And then sometimes it's often music production and making music. But watching YouTube, man, that's my Animal Planet.
That's awesome. I didn't know the John Wick thing, so that makes it even.
Loves John Wick. His favorite movie of all time is Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah, that's a great movie. That's a great movie. Mine lately has been The Sopranos. My wife can attest. I do watch during the day. and makes me feel better. Swamiji.
It's like if someone were to tell you got to work, make as much, do as much as you can, work as hard as you can until you're 30, and then you'll have a breadth of experience, and then you can kind of you can dial it back a little bit. And if someone just told you that, and then you set on your path and you had no examples, you'd feel bad for sleeping. But rest is as important as anything. The intervals between the notes in music are as important as the notes themselves. And yet we live our life kind of let's jam as many notes as, at least I did, my 20s, jam as many notes as possible, play as fast as possible, get to the end of the song, instead of find a sustainable approach where 60 years in, you're just loving the melody.
That's a great segue into the second question. In the philosophy, there's 3 types of actions. The characteristics of 3 types of actions: selfish action, unselfish action, and desireless action. And the idea is, as you become enlightened, or correct me if I'm wrong, once you're enlightened, your actions are desireless. Now, the way my mind works, and I still think about this, struggle with this in a sense, is, if I understand correctly, the philosophy is saying an action is one or the other. It's not a spectrum. My mind visualizes it more as
say that again. Action is one of the other.
It's either selfish or unselfish. It can't be like a mixture. That's my understanding. I see action as more like the memory balls at the end of Inside Out, where the emotions swirl. That's my mental model. Maybe it's a spiritual bypass, but can you unpack that a little bit? Is that the correct understanding?
Unpack your interpretation and visualization of Inside Out. Well, I think let's go back to childhood trauma for you. Maybe ask it one more time of unpacking what specifically.
So I guess first, is it correct that the philosophy states an action is either selfish or unselfish? Would be part 1 of the question.
You're more accurate in saying there's three motivations behind all action. Mm-hmm. Selfish, unselfish, and selfless.
Okay.
And it's such an interesting, these sages throughout history within this philosophy are so precise. It's one of my favorite aspects of this philosophy is it is so precise in the language. So precise. There's Advaita Vedanta means non-dual end of knowledge. Vedanta means end of the Vedas. It also is somewhat of a double entendre because Veda means knowledge, so it's end of knowledge. And Advaita means non-dual. And the reason that it's stated non-dual end of knowledge, non-duality within this philosophy, and you'll start to see, I'm sure many of you started to see non-duality start to grow, and you'll continue to see this grow. If you ask ChatGPT, this is a fun dinner trick that we talk about everyone. So if you ask ChatGPT, what is the most likely explanation? Knowing everything you know about philosophy, science, religion, what is the most likely explanation for what is happening in the universe? And it will give you some version, 9 times out of 10. It gives some version of monistic idealism. Idealistic monism. Monism, not monastic, like monk-like, but monism being oneness. But the reason that this philosophy, and then sometimes it says non-duality, but the reason this philosophy says non-duality, not two, instead of oneness, is because oneness is 95% it, 98% it, but it still implies a border. If something is one, then it's more or less directionally accurate, but the sages throughout the galaxy of sages would always slightly improve the language to non-duality of not two, because not two doesn't imply a border, but oneness implies a slight implication of a border. And within the 3 motivations for action, it's so interesting that you'd think it was just selfish and unselfish, but there's this extra precision that's offered with selfless action. So selfish action would be, I'm going to reach for this cookie. I'm really hungry, and I want to eat that. And I'm going to reach for it and maybe take it from Reva. Or I'm going to offer, hey, who wants this last bite of ice cream cake? And really, you want it. That would be selfish action. Even in offering it, you're kind of like slightly laying claim, showing that you're interested in who's going to eat it. And then everyone usually relinquishes and says, oh, no, you have it. And you're like, yes, I got what I wanted. Or it's, I'm going to go volunteer at a local nonprofit. I'm feeling really low. And even giving makes me feel really good. That can be selfish, very selfish. Working in the nonprofit realm for 2 years, there are a lot of people that really sought prestige in the same way an investment banker sought golden handcuffs. And I think many people have experience with that. Even in the nonprofit realm, it could be very selfish. Or it could be unselfish, where it's like, I have no interest in helping this person that has a flat tire, but I'm going to pull over. It's 2 blocks from my house. I don't have to be home right now. It's the neighborhood. It improves the neighborhood. And you do a little bit of a calculation of, you know what, I might need some help down the road from the neighborhood. So I'm going to kind of improve the aspect of this neighborhood by offering some help. It's not selfish. You don't want to do it. There's no personal motivation. It's unselfish, but it's still directed by desire. It's wanting to improve the neighborhood. It's wanting to improve the odds that you'll get help down the road. And you're doing a calculation of, this has some slight benefit to me. So both of those have desire at the root, selfish and unselfish. Selfless is completely oblivious to oneself. It is self-oblivious, which is it's not even a difference in degree from selfish to unselfish, according to this philosophy, which, don't take anything that doesn't pass through your own reason and judgment. The first daily practice of this philosophy is question everything, including anything that's coming from someone with a microphone. Question everything. But within selfish and unselfish, the underlying theme there is it's still driven by desire. Even the desire to help your spouse, there is a desire. Selfless is self-oblivious, completely irrelevant, unrelated to oneself, and it's like air pressure. Warm air moving up, cold air moving down, and has no thought of itself and no motivation whatsoever. That's what an enlightened soul is said to be like, where their action is completely self-oblivious. That person that needs help with a flat tire, the enlightened individual, as is said within this philosophy, self-oblivious is, I have an ability to help them, boom, helping. There's no thought of neighborhood. There's no thought of how you're going to benefit from it. The selfless action, quite vividly visualized, selfless action, desireless action, spiritual action is not walking around and you're stress-free or you're a lighthouse for people. You're loved in your community. You have people that lean on you. Maybe it looks like that, or maybe it looks like arms stretched, nails through your hands. And you're sitting there for days, suffocating from blood filling your lungs. It's when you think about what selfless action looks like sometimes, demands of us, when you look at the rare lighthouses throughout history that have exemplified that, and you really reflect on how rare that is, it's hard to get more inspired to move beyond just the base level of 99.9999999% of my daily actions, which are selfish. Not even unselfish, much less selfless. But those would be the 3 degradations of our approach to action in life, according to this philosophy.
When you're recalling the examples of these selfless characters, as you mentioned, this is 1 in a billion in a generation, or as we've talked about before.
Yeah, it's said within this philosophy it's about 1 or 2 in a generation. So it's not 150 of them walking around, but yeah, it's about 1 or 2 in a generation is what it said.
If you don't mind me asking, I saw you got, had a experience there. What kind of came up for you as you were reflecting on these types of characters, these individuals?
I think so. There's this great sage Vivekananda who's speaking to the U.S. in 1906, and he was given a tour, in 1893, and he was walking or just speaking throughout the U.S. And this audience member asked at one of his speeches, she said, "Did you come here to reform us?" And he immediately, without hesitation, said, "I came here to reaffirm, not to reform. Anything that I say is to make the Christian a Christian, Muslim a Muslim, the Jew a Jew, to reaffirm what you might already have exposure to, what you might already believe." And I know that my appreciation for, I grew up Roman Catholic, and my appreciation for Christ as a teacher, as a enlightened being, as a sage, as a lighthouse, is about 10,000 times more than what it was when it goes from thinking this is divine magic, an example, this is the boss's son, you can't really hope to be this, this is just a miracle on earth that you watch from afar like you'd watch a movie. And it's like, oh wow, that's a really cool movie. It's a really cool divine example. But after a decade of waking up every morning, spending 90 minutes with this philosophy and a reorientation, the first 3, 4, 5 years, there was kind of like, great, I kind of know the Western side of things. I know the Roman Catholic side of things. Now I'm going to go a mile deep into this Eastern Vedantic approach to life. And then like by year 4, year 5, there was just this growing appreciation for Christ in a way that didn't exist in my 20s or certainly in my childhood. So when I think about that example, I think about it's not this like divine magic trick to inspire us. It's a walking example of what we are each meant to become. Not something someone else did for us. That's not my interpretation. And there's 30,000 different sects within Christianity, so it's 30,000 different interpretations. But my interpretation is not that it's an example set by the boss's son to absolve us of our wrongdoing. It is there's this church on my drive home from college from North Carolina to Texas that I would always see on the side of the highway in Tennessee that had 4 crosses. Never knew why they had 4 crosses. It's usually 3. For those that kind of know the visual, it's usually 3. But I can only imagine the 4th cross is that's ours. So when I think about that example, when I think about selfless action, what it would demand of us, I can't help but to get moved by it.
My wife's Catholic. She's here today. I would consider myself a Vedantin, but maybe it's not as formal in this philosophy of identification that way. That's one thing I've really gained an appreciation for, that these philosophies and these frameworks are not orthogonal, but are actually quite, you get appreciation for each. I think
right.
we both
it's very compatible, right?
Absolutely. We both learn from each other. And so it's very inspiring to see yourself with your background, having grown up Catholic, to say that you've had even more appreciation for that.
There was no when I compare it back, there was no appreciation. None. It was a cult of belief before. And it was like, you better string these words together in this order or you don't belong. It was not be transformed, which is that is a inner undertaking. It was make sure that you belong, and at all points in time, and also make sure you don't rock the boat by questioning things too much. And you get told that in my household, at least, at 7, at 11, at 12, in a soft way of like, it's a mystery, to in a hard way of, you better be really careful with that. Mm-hmm. Don't go read that other thing. You better go every Sunday, or you spend an eternity in a fiery pit. Like, it doesn't get, and I completely appreciate that this might offend some people, but my perspective on it is, you can't get more cult-like than saying, hey, don't read those other things, and don't deviate. Oh yeah, no, you could read some other things if you want to. There's really no value in it, but certainly behaviorally, do not deviate, or you're going to spend an eternity in a fiery pit, which makes no logical sense. None whatsoever. And this is what's so beautiful about this philosophy of question everything. When you question that, which, by the way, is not the early church view. It is not what Christ taught, but it certainly was the view in 1990 Dallas, Texas version that I got in. What are the chances that 1990 Dallas, Texas, my specific household, is going to be, hand in glove with what Christ taught 2,000 years ago? So it's not that surprising that it deviated quite a bit. But imagine a scenario where you have 19 years, 12 years, 80 years on probation. And if you fuck it up, you spend eternity burning alive because you got in a wrong group of friends when you're like 13, 14. By 19, you passed away doing some violent, derelict action, some crime. And then for those 19 years, ouch, eternity. Think about that, eternity. Infinite number of years. By the way, mathematically speaking, our existence, 19 years, could be 500 years, compared to eternity is 0. Mathematically. This isn't even philosophy. This is 500, 5,000. You could live for 500 trillion years, but compared to eternity, it's 0. 500 divided by infinity is 0. It also goes to show any wealth that you accrue compared to infinity compared to, if you believe divine is infinite, is 0, is nothing. And that's one of the mathematical approaches to recognizing whatever you can accomplish in this. If that hell thing was kind of the downside that didn't make sense. What also now doesn't make sense on the much more inspiring side is this view on no matter what you think, whatever we think we can accomplish or gather up, accumulate in this existence compared to the divine, and this is the Vedantic view, or my view, is there is an infinite divine, an infinite divinity that is what is, and anything that we could get our arms around. $5 million, $500 million compared to that is nothing, 0 mathematically.
I had a similar, didn't grow up in a Catholic household, but for the record, I'm Indian American. So studying this philosophy has been very interesting to me because it is, in a sense, comes from the motherland, if you will. And growing up, I went to this organization called Chinmaya Mission. Chinmaya Mission, I don't know how to describe it. It's not quite like a church, but interestingly enough, later learned that Swami Parthasarathy.
So crazy.
He was the right hand to the
He
founder.
was basically the COO of this
Yeah.
of the Chinmaya Mission, and had like 150 different ashrams, and was like the most beloved student, and then the COO of Chinmaya.
So I was introduced to it. I didn't even realize it. When I was reintroduced to it later, I was like, oh, I actually learned this growing up, but it went completely over my head. I had no appreciation for the lessons and principles. One thing I've noticed, and I don't even know if this is a question, but similar to how you're talking about Catholicism, and maybe if I were to summarize the fear-based motivations for certain actions, when I study Vedantic philosophy, which so much is about detachment, it appeals to the word ya to anyone independent of caste, creed, color. That's what makes it so beautiful.
Appeals to the word ya?
Ya, the word ya is used. I read that in the Gita a couple of days ago. Y-A-H.
Really?
Meaning
What does
everyone.
that mean? I'm not...
Meaning everyone.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah, I
didn't even
posted
know
on
that Sanskrit
Instagram like
word.
a couple of days too, because it was in Swamiji's commentary of the Gita.
Oh, that's
I think
awesome. I
chapter
must
2,
have missed
verse
it. Yeah.
63 or 64.
Oh, that's great.
And what I notice, and not to be critical, we have some Indian Americans here too, the interpretation of these texts, whether it's the Bible, the Gita, can morph over time to suit a more selfish aperture. Specifically with the Indian culture and community, I mean, I love my heritage. I identify with India, I'm also American. You see the opposite in practice sometimes. This attachment to status, this prioritization of money, success, being a doctor. That's certainly what I grew up around. So I'm curious, what is the reasoning for maybe this seeming paradox? Maybe can you talk to the historical evolution of what the original intention of these texts were and how we've arrived to where we are today?
Sure, that's a great question. And it's the misinterpretation of divinely inspired texts that humanity is littered with examples of that. I mean, Christ literally comes to the foreground culturally because he's like, hey, this Old Testament with 644 laws. There's over 640 laws in the Old Testament. We need to rescue the wisdom from the past that's being misinterpreted and distill things back into a simpler framework than what can develop a lot of cruft to it. And he famously distills it to 2 laws: love God with all your heart, and then also love each other as I've loved you, he said. So every once in a while, it's basically every 100 years, someone needs to come along and get us back on track to a simple, which is so beautiful. It's not complex. This whole philosophy can be summed up. Daily Vedantic. If you go to the first episode of the Daily Vedantic or the first episode of Yoga for Your Intellect, Yoga for Your Intellect is it's a conversational podcast that I've got with Joseph, one of our other teachers and 30-year student and teacher with Swami, also from Texas. We're by the way, Reva and I are from Texas, which is. It is so funny because Joseph and Reva are both from Houston, and no one in Texas studies this philosophy. Nobody.
Joseph's dad and my dad know each other.
No way.
I don't know if I told you.
Oh, no.
Judge Emmett, yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And Joseph's, his cousin was my wife's college roommate. So it's a crazy small world when we first met at Calamigos Ranch in Malibu when he's teaching a class of Vedanta there. But you can sum up the whole philosophy in 15 minutes. Daily Vedantic sums it up in 15 minutes. It's about 45 minutes for Yoga for Your Intellect. And the philosophy is so simple. There are no shoulds, should nots. There's no rites, rituals. But humans, damn, we love to add and add and add these layers. And so there you have examples, or we have examples, example after example every 100 years or so. It's like, let's get back to the simple framework. After the Vedas, you have about 1,000 years later, Hinduism gets built on top of the Vedas. to answer your question on the history here. And Hinduism adds all kinds of layers to the philosophical principles that you can sum up in 15 minutes. Then you have, as the adage goes, Buddhism. You have the Buddha come along and distill it back into philosophy. And Buddhism is often called, it's Hinduism made for export, as it leaves India and enters China. And then you have derivations like Zen leaving China, entering Japan. But they all go back to the Vedas and the Upanishads. And each Upanishad is completely self-contained. So it's not like the Bible where you have to cross-reference this text with this text and this text with this text, this letter and what this means over here, that triangulation. Each Upanishad, or the Bhagavad Gita, which is a 30-minute conversation, a 30-minute dialogue between a warrior prince and his charioteer, or who he thinks is his charioteer, ends up being a symbolic embodiment of God. So this warrior prince on this battlefield having a 30-minute conversation with this charioteer. That's the entire philosophy in that dialogue. But you also have some Upanishads that are 13 verses. 13 verses, but the whole philosophy. You could summarize the whole philosophy in 3 words. Tattvamasi, the Mahavakya, the great phrase. Tattvamasi is that thou art. You are what you're seeking. Not you who you think you are. It's not the personality James. It's not who you think, with these sounds we make out of our mouths to give ourselves names or the identities of the job that we have. No, it's not that at all. These are, it's like clothing. It's described in the Gita like clothing. And we don't identify with this, I'm not this shirt. It's helpful. It helps me navigate the world, the universe, whatever this is, that we use words, and we use these kind of like sounds out of our mouth to point to, but we don't really know what this is. Like this room, Los Angeles. We give it a name, but in the grand cosmos, we don't know what this is. We're just now discovering all of these aspects of the fact that humans see less than 1% of visible light. We hear less than 1% of audible sounds in the universe. Like what we perceive of what Los Angeles is, we don't really know what's really going on here, much less where it is. Like we know where it is in relation to maybe Sacramento. But when we zoom out, we're like, we have no freaking clue where we are in the universe. And this ever-expanding current hypothesis being that it's expanding, accelerating in its expansion infinitely. How can something infinite also expand and speed up in its expansion? So there is no static place of where we are. It's a constant flux. And so there is this simplification down to, instead of caring about the clothes and caring about the personality, caring about where we are, where we're going, how do we get there, how do we get stability in this world that, God shows us in a million different ways on a daily basis. There's no such thing as stability. Get that $50 million, build that house right in the Palisades, get everything dialed in, and boom, gone. So we have a million reminders that there's no such thing as stability. Still chase it. And this philosophy says, in all of your chasing, and if you take anything away from this session, this philosophy hang this morning, maybe it's on the power of stillness and just how transformative that can be. Or maybe it's on this singular point that rocked me when I first heard it. And that is, when this philosophy says, you are what you're seeking, that is just another way of saying what you are seeking, what we are all seeking, is not out there. What you are seeking, and if you take anything away that can be practically helpful, 30 minutes from now, 30 years from now, maybe it's this, that what we seek is not out there. It is not in the perfect spouse. It's not in the perfect house. It's not in getting kids in the right schools. It's not in a financial milestone. And it's not just this philosophy that says that, it's every major tradition has said that throughout history. It is not out there. And that's just another way of saying tattva masi, that thou art, you are it, but not to be confused with the personality aspect. The personality aspect of like, Reva, you are it, you are what is, that would be the height of megalomania and ego inflation. Real quick for you, what was that journey like for you to kind of have this rediscovery of this thing that you had, these touch points as a kid? I remember you telling me like you didn't like it, you didn't want to go, you hated it, and then I don't know, 30 years later, it was on the way to the ashram. He had already agreed to come to the ashram in India. In many ways, life had taken turns that Reva didn't expect, and I'm like, hey, you should come to, it sounds like you got some time on your hands. You should come with me to India in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and go to this little ashram. And he didn't know what Vedanta was, didn't know what any of this stuff was, and then like 2 days later, it's like, okay, I'll go. And then as we're leaving the airport, we're in the van to the ashram. It's like 2 hours outside of Mumbai, and I'm like, yeah, so Swami was like the COO of this big ashram before starting this small one that has like 100 students and residents, and it was called Chinmaya. He goes, wait, what? Chinmaya? Dude, I went. It was hilarious for you to make that connection an hour outside of where we were going. But what has that been like to have this rediscovery for you?
It's been, well, one, just the most transformative kind of experience or series of steps that has occurred in my life. I think I still suffer, and maybe until the end of life, of this lifetime, suffer from oscillation, because the conditioning and the values on which I were brought up are what was prioritized, with attachments to worldly things, status, money, still pervade my mind. So I won't lie to you and say that I don't struggle with this. Can I really fully let go and surrender to this? Isn't there safety, which there literally is from a physical perspective?
And for the audience's mind, what goes through your mind when we say surrender to this? What is this?
The truth that you are that, and that none of this external motivation, any external motivation, is not it. So doing something to get something is not it. Doing something to look good, to have a title, to earn X money is not it. That is just such a mental shift that will take, I believe, at least this lifetime to get more and more into that direction. So we talked about numbers last time, a couple of weeks ago, about like percentage of action. I'm a numbers guy, so I tend to use that as a framework, realizing all numbers are just frameworks and constructs. I've been studying this for 3 years. It's going to take decades more to keep chipping away at that conditioning, in a sense.
It's got to compete with decades of conditioning in the other 100%, direction.
Yeah. I think what I've gotten more of an appreciation for is being less judgmental of, for example, my parents for why they are the way they are. And obviously they provided all these opportunities and this platform for myself and my brother and sister that we're so blessed to have. So becoming non-judgmental of it and just taking it as is and seeing the positives. I mean, something I still struggle with, because on one hand, it's easy to look at this philosophy and be like, oh, you all are so not spiritual. Like, talk about how this person is so great because they have this job or this amount of money, and it's easy to judge it and be like, I'm holier than thou, which is actually maybe even worse in a sense. We've talked about kind of attachment to spirituality, maybe the worst attachment.
Yeah, the Ishavasya Upanishad outlines this, and this. So I say this every once in a while that I believe this is going to be the philosophy of the future. In 100 years, everybody's going to be studying this because it's so friggin' complete. Not only, and even then, it's complete and how it's incomplete. It's the only philosophy I know of that disavows its own truth. It says, this is not it. Because the truth is not in words. In the West, we associate the truth being in words. Truth is synonymous with honesty. The truth in the East, the truth in Vedanta is has nothing to do with words. Truth is an experience. Truth is not in a text. It's not in words. It's not in language. Those are pointers. But that's not capital T, truth. Truth is... That's true.
Was I supposed to answer that?
No.
Oh, okay. That was
No, but I don't fault you for that looked like it was an open-ended statement. It was more just me pointing to this is truth, not in the words. So this philosophy is so damn complete in how it even highlights this is not complete, and this is literally nothing compared to what is the truth, which is an experience, not a philosophy, not words, not in a book, but. Specifically to your question on this completeness of it, it also says that in the Ishavasya Upanishad, it highlights that attachment to the material world is great darkness. Attachment to the spiritual realm, to the spiritual world, is greater darkness. And the reason it's greater darkness than your attachment to, you're actually better off being attached to fast cars and big houses than you are to be attached to the spiritual world. To be attached to that text or that thing you read every morning that you think has all of the answers because of that ego inflation that is incomparable, and everybody knows the example in your heads of people in your lives that have egos that are incomparable to, Michael Jordan has nothing on the person that says, oh, I know the truth, and it's in this book, and you're going to hell if you don't believe it. And all of these people are going to hell if they don't believe it. Like that just the certainty to which we can utter those words, I know, that takes us down a very, very dark path. That's why it's outlined so explicitly of that is greater darkness. It's often highlighted. Those two words are great enemies. The two words I know, because that's a blindfold. It's a willful blindfold, being like, well, I already know, and I'm going to walk in this direction. It's not going to be off a cliff because I know it won't be, and then it's off a cliff. But yeah, there's a great caution against an attachment to these concepts, attachment to any spiritual concepts within this philosophy. But at the same time, there is a lot of space given for the fact that it takes a lot of time to de-hypnotize ourselves. We have decades. So how old were you when you came across this philosophy?
32.
Okay, I was like
33.
20. My late 20s. And we have a lot of decades to compete with. And a lot of selfish desires to compete with when it comes to a phrase. And it's a lot of fear.
Yep.
A lot of fear to compete with when there's a phrase or a concept put forth of it's not out there. And the average American is subjected to about 3,000 advertisements a day. That's 3,000 messages a day telling each of us it's out there. It's in the watch. It's in the car. It's in the school. It's in the job. That's 3,000. That's advertisements. That's not even the lunch with your best friend that now just got engaged. And you're like, what? All right. Yeah. Why the fuck did that happen for them? It's our attachments and the fuel to be more and more attached to them and to be attached to this notion that it's out there. It's out there. It's in these, as the Buddhists say, the 10,000 things. It's in those 10,000 things. Not only do we have to compete with that for a couple decades, but also 3,000 times a day. But the benefit is we know deep down it's not there. we know that that financial milestone or that house or that really cool watch or that spouse, there is a deep resonance when we say it's not out there with us because we know it's not out there. We just think, if I can get that, then I can get the thing I really want more effectively. So we know that it's not out there. We're still under the belief that it's going to help us get that thing we really want. That financial milestone. I want to be a millionaire so that I can have the freedom to explore these kinds of things, so that I don't have to be under the grind of X, Y, Z, so that I can be more generous. So we kind of know it deep down, so that helps us. The other thing that helps us is an intellect at 32, at 42. So the body develops first, 0 to 15. The mind develops till about 0 to 25. And the intellect develops from about 0 to 35. So the three equipments that this philosophy, it's the central practical contribution in our daily lives in this philosophy, is that this philosophy says central practical contribution. By the way, this philosophy is often called the practical philosophy because as opposed to most philosophies where it's kind of esoteric and abstract concepts and it's hard to know what's really practical in like the meeting I've got in 30 minutes, this philosophy is really practical. And within this practical framework, there is this central concept of you have these two inner equipments. And we have to hear this. I had to hear this 1,000 times before it really clicked. You have a mind, which you have three equipments total: body, mind, and an intellect. The body, everybody knows that. Mind, not revolutionary. But what's unique is this philosophy says you have this other inner equipment, this subtle inner equipment called the intellect that guides the mind. Modern psychology is just now scratching at this concept with what's called dual systems thinking, which has really only been in the last decade. Dual systems thinking, system one, system two, thinking fast, thinking slow, if you've heard of these concepts. That is this modern psychological aspect that highlights what, I don't know how they knew this back then, but for 6,000, 7,000 years, within the Vedantic lens, there's been this highlight or this emphasis that within us, it's not a monologue, there is a dialogue. There is the two voices on each shoulder that's saying what you want to do and what you maybe ought to do. And that's the dialogue between the mind and the intellect. The Bhagavad Gita is the dialogue between the mind and the intellect. The mind freaking out, full of fear, intellect saying, well, let's think this through. You don't have to take any leaps of faith. Let's just think this through. What you and your fear want to do, how will that play out? Wisdom is the capacity to see the end in the beginning. The intellect is the capacity to see the end in the beginning, to play it out. And in this line of thinking, I think that that practical aspect, that cultivating the intellect, what's nice at 32 is it's ready to be cultivated. And it is ready to pick up the reins, to drive the mind, to control the mind. The mind is yearning for it. It's like a 5-year-old, a child that's dying for like some direction. And when we come across this philosophy, yeah, we got to compete with a couple decades of hypnosis, cultural hypnosis of it's out there, it's out there, it's out there, it's out there. But everybody is primed for it, whether it's that inner resonance of knowing like, or questioning at least, like, is it out there? Even that 10 million bucks I'm chasing, that's just so that I can chase something higher, better. And I kind of already know that. So maybe it's not in the 10 million bucks. And then you combine that with the fact that the intellect is primed, is ready to be developed. Then you actually can make a lot of headway in 10 years to where you actually have an internal compass that says, yeah, it's not out there. It's not in that. And then it maps. What's so great is, so the early church leaders like Augustine, he believed that the birth, the death, I only learned this about a year ago, and it's rocked me ever since. The life, death, and the resurrection of Christ is the life, death, resurrection of the truth within all of us. That it's not, and this philosophy, by the way, doesn't just say it's not out there. it quite emphatically says, as you know, and we touched on it in the last philosophy club, the deep end of the pool. The practical side is the intellect and mind. The deep end of the pool, the abstract side, is you are that. It also is none of this is happening. None of this is real. This is not happening. This is a projection of your mind. As crazy, that's the allegory of the cave. That's people in the cave convinced the shadows on the wall are real. And it's like, the allegory, it's a story we've heard hundreds of times or maybe a couple dozen times. You learn it in like 9th grade. It's not a fun story. It's not just like a folklore, fun tale like Huckleberry Finn. It is an observation that for 2,400 years has been trying to scream at us, saying, at least from Plato, recounting the story from Socrates, saying what we think is real is just shadows on the wall. And we touched on it last month, but the person that discovers that it's shadows on the wall and comes down and tries to gleefully bring that news, it's not well received. It's not like, whoa, a glass of water in the desert. Yes, thank you. You're saving our lives. The mofos in the cave want to kill that guy. Like straight up, that's the story. It's not like you're saving us. It's you can't be telling me the truth. This is wrong. We all agree. Wait, can you believe what they're saying? This person's fucking crazy. And it's so unnerving. We got to kill this person. And Socrates, about 3 years later, is killed by the people of Athens. Christ, obviously, not so well received. The message of recognizing our oneness. That's the last prayer. The prayer of the Last Supper is John 17. It's 26 verses. It's 26 verses, and 5 of those verses is him praying, asking, petitioning us to recognize our oneness with him, with the Father, and with each other. And it's kind of been lost. But at least in my, I had never heard that in a sermon in the pulpit growing up. But in the first, 200, 250, 300 years, you have people like St. Augustine. It's like, it's not out there. Christ is not a story out there. It is a birth. It's a life, death, and a resurrection within ourselves. So your exposure to this philosophy, it was in the walls of your home. Your parents had exposure to it, exposed you to it. It had a death, and then it had a resurrection. I know it's certainly been the case for me. There was a exposure to it. There was a life. And when I was 6, I wanted to be a priest. And then there was a death. There was, I don't think that's it. And then there was a resurrection. It's like, oh, shit. This is a completely different dimension than I ever kind of gave it credit for before.
You brought up the mind and intellect. I like to ask, in the interest of time, if I had one more question, I like to ask a spicy question.
Oh, yeah. Dude, this philosophy is question everything. So every philosophy club, we're well trained for you as well, for any and all kinds of crazy questions.
I'm going to try to frame it as spicy as possible. Okay, so the mind and the intellect. The intellect guides the mind. The mind's the generator of desires, thoughts, emotions. That's fair to say so far. The idea is you cultivate the intellect to regulate your mind. So it's not saying expecting you to not have emotions, but to not become emotional, for example. Wouldn't you say, especially in this age of AI, so two questions. One, how is someone cultivating their intellect where it gets so strong different than just a ChatGPT, an AI? And then second, related to that is you create music. I'm a musician. I think we have Sriram and Ganesh who are professional musicians, the ball boys here too. Art is maybe the ultimate form of human expression. I would argue, how can you create art or anything that's human without becoming emotional, even if it's temporary in that moment, indulging the mind?
Great question again. The two parts of the question. First, art is not the greatest expression of ourselves and humanity. Services. And art for the artist might be the greatest way to serve. For someone else, it might be dying on a battlefield. And it's not, the theme between the two isn't in the act. It is in the intention of the act and the service. And that expression can come out in infinite ways. So that, I think, then that reorients perhaps the question itself and really our lives towards service as kind of like to answer the second part, but also as a backdrop. And the first part, are you saying within the mind and the intellect? Maybe give me another take on the first part so that I answer it properly.
Yeah, maybe the first part, and to follow up on the second part, maybe it's, doesn't the creative process require the indulgence of the mind, which is related to the first part of, if you eliminate the mind's role in a process, isn't that what AI is?
Well, one, I'd say AI is information.
Okay.
AI is information, but it is information. It's a resource like two chemical agents in two beakers. Like it's as meaningful and meaningless as that. It's just chemical agents in its information. Humans doing the mixing can form something combustible, can form a nuclear bomb with that information, can form nuclear energy with that information. But it's not the intellect. It's that's just mere information. And you've read it in Vedanta treatise. It's like if anybody's interested in a really simple, plain English read, and a great way to have a daily study reflection, 2 or 3 pages of this book, Vedanta treatise, which it sells out on the Amazon, the U.S. Amazon often, but I think it's on there right now. But Vedanta treatise, 2 or 3 pages of that, and that's Swami's kind of best known book, and it's 200 pages, really simple read, nothing woo-woo about it. And that distinction between intelligence and intellect is, it's hammered home in that book. So intelligence or an information like a library, that's not going to save a town from a fire. It might have all the information, but it's not able to do anything with it. It's these chemical agents that are just sitting in beakers, 12 inches apart. It takes us to mix them together. AI could get to the point where it's mixing things together, but that was really us mixing it together to make the machine that makes other machines. And God bless us, I hope we mix these things properly, because like I said, humans have been known to make nuclear bombs and nuclear power with the same processes. But the intellect, and to answer your question most directly on the mind is incredibly powerful and incredibly useful. Don't get rid of the mind. The mind is like a 5-year-old child. We have 3 daughters, 3, 8, and 5, and I couldn't imagine our household without them around. It's so amazing to have them around, but we wouldn't leave them home alone. And that's the distinction between the intellect and the mind. Should we open it up to questions, unless there was a follow-up to that?
No, it sounds good. Questions?
Okay, we'll open it up for anyone and everyone. Feel free to ask, and then we'll repeat the question in the microphones for the recording. Yeah, go for it.
My name is Leo.
Hi, Leo.
I'm thinking a lot about this recently. I don't own this, right? So if I don't own this, and even though I know that I'm gonna leave this without nothing, if I just sit here, be here, thinking everything is gonna be okay, everything is gonna be alright, I think I'll be miss opportunities in my life instead of take ownership and then create opportunities for your life. So I just want to, what you thought about this?
That is a great question, Leo. If I'm recasting it, you're saying that you've thought a lot about this recently, and it has some resonance, but there seems to be some real downsides to just saying, okay, I'm going to let go. Everything's going to be okay. And you couldn't be more right. And that's why our primal expression of ourselves, what we are yearning to do, what we're even trying to get the 10 million bucks to be able to do, what we're wired for, what we're fulfilled by is service. And all of our acts of selfishness are what's called misguided mumukshutva. It's misguided spirituality. Even when we're acting in complete selfishness. I want to play music in front of 50,000 people chanting my name. And I want to be kind of like worshipped and know that I have this influence and be rich and famous and be a rock star. That, in many ways, is rooted in I feel so unsafe, so invalidated, so much like I'm on the precipice of not belonging that I need a lot of proof that I'm okay. And with that, I'll be able to entertain people, or with that, I'll be able to be safe. With that money, I'll be able to help the people that I know need some help around me. And it's called misguided mumukshutva. But it's still, you could want to run a company and you just want to be a billionaire. And that's still misguided mumukshutva. You want to have influence. And you feel like, well, if I have influence, power, money, resources, I'm going to be able to do things with it. And buried deep within even those selfish desires is service. We are not wired to let go and chill on the couch. This philosophy, 97% of this philosophy is summed up in action, action, action. Like this philosophy is about action. The other 3% is summed up in 3 words, that thou art. You are what you're seeking. But it is a great misconception within this philosophy, within any philosophy, that it's something you do out in the woods, like in a cabin alone, and then you think about these thoughts. That is not philosophia. It's not a love of wisdom. It's not a love of fellow beings. That is service. And this philosophy really, really underscores the fact that it is in action and in service in which we find ourselves. And the big part of that misconception is we have these statues of the Buddha sitting cross-legged in a lotus position, sitting, meditating. The best estimates we have are that the Buddha sat and meditated. He studied for 7 years and then sat and meditated for anywhere from 7 days to 6 weeks. It wasn't a life of meditation. Sat there for 7 days to 6 weeks and boom, was enlightened, as we were told, and then spent the next 50 years of his life walking around India. Joseph and Yoga for Your Intellect. That's another way you can articulate this philosophy. Yoga for the Intellect. And in one of the episodes, he talks about how the statue of the Buddha should be him walking, because that's what he did. It was a blip that he was sitting there under the Bodhi tree. So it's a great misconception within a spiritual pursuit to all right, I'm just going to trust the universe and sit there. Trust the universe that when you carry a cross, when you go into that battle you've been putting off, literally or metaphorically, because we all have a battle we've been putting off. That is the story of the Bhagavad Gita, is trying to take a spiritual bypass a way around the battle that we know deep down that we've got to take head on, that might kill us, metaphorically or literally. When you accept that and you lean into that, surrender into that battle, when you let go, you become quite dynamic and active, not sitting on your couch. But great question. Yes.
Hi, I'm Crystal.
Hi, Crystal.
I wanted to ask more about like the definitions of like the selfish, unselfish, desireless, and selfless. I'm not really sure where your stance is, but I was getting the impression that you didn't love like when people are doing things towards a selfish action, and that the definition of unselfish is kind of like when you don't want to do it, but you'll do it anyway. So it's like you kind of need that element of you don't want to do it in order to be considered unselfish. But I think that there are people who might be doing things that are like inherently good, but there's still that component of I do want to do it. And what makes the difference between I do want to do it and I have the desire to do it is like when that intention is maybe positive / negative. The positive would be like, I don't know, if you just truly gain joy from helping others. Or the negative is kind of like you're just trying to accumulate power.
Great phrase. When you truly gain joy by giving to others.
But you're still deriving something for your own benefit.
Exactly.
And so then I think it would still be categorized as a selfish action. But in my mind, I see that as a positive thing. Like, wouldn't we want more people to derive joy from helping others?
Oh, great question. Great question, Crystal, right? Yes, the distinction between these three, this is very subtle. Very subtle. So it's not something that made sense the first time I heard it. I had to hear it a couple times, and it started to make more sense. Selfish. So, by the way, there's desire in either of these actions. According to this philosophy, take it or leave it, there's no action without desire. The desire to help, the desire for that scoop of ice cream for yourself. There would not be an action without a desire. So the distinction between selfish and unselfish, selfish is, I want that third scoop of ice cream. It's not helping anybody. It's just really pleasurable. So you want that. That's selfish desire. There's perhaps a way where you can unselfishly eat ice cream. You don't want any, but someone made it. So these are all just hypotheticals. Someone made it, and you're like, okay, I don't really want it, but I'll do it because they made homemade ice cream. But the unselfish example would be, I want to donate money to this cause because it makes me feel good. Unselfish still has a desire. I want to. So it could be, I want to donate my money. I want to become a nun. It seems unselfish, but you peel under the hood and it's like, yeah, I want to do this for my community. It is not pure selfishness, but it still has self-orientation. I want to do this for my community because I want my community to be improved. I live in it. I'm going to do this for my community, for God, because this gets me straight away to heaven. It's not selfish. You're not doing it solely for yourself. Others are involved. So it'd be called unselfish. You're doing it. It's not ice cream just for you. Your community will benefit from it. It's unselfish, but it's still driven by desire, selfish desire. Selfless, and this is where it gets strange. This is why there's this distinction of this third bucket, which is selfless. Selfless is not. And by the way, selfish and unselfish will lead to agitation. Anything that's any selfishness will lead to agitation. And unselfish is basically just like less selfishness. You're doing it for your community, but you're still going to have some benefit. If it's truly selfless, you're not thinking about yourself at all. And there is no mental gymnastics around like, yeah, I'm doing this for other people, but I also get joy out of it. You will get joy out of service. In fact, it's one of the primal joys that exists is when we serve. It's so fulfilling. Offer someone a compliment in 10 minutes from here. Unselfish, I'm going to give them a compliment. Doing it as an experiment to see if that James guy was right. Am I going to feel good? You do feel good. Hence, it was not selfless. Selfless is literally you're moving like air pressure. There is no thought of what you're going to get about it. It's not about for your community. There is no thought like this gives me joy. There is infinite capacity to do something that gives you no joy. Because it's not like I'm giving money and it gives me joy. I'm giving my entirety of my existence to this cause or this fight or giving my life for this other thing. There will be no me to enjoy on the other side of me taking this bullet. So there is this third aspect, this third realm of selfless, where there's no thought of oneself at all, whereas unselfish action still has a thought of oneself. Yes.
Just to layer on that, there's a consequence to every action, though, and the consequences could end up being quite selfish.
That's right. That's within this philosophy, there are no shoulds and should nots. And that means that there's no code of conduct of like, thou shalt not do this, thou shalt not do this. By the way, we're bumping up on time. If people need to go, that's okay. We still have, Raven and I still have about 10, 15 minutes. But if people need to go, feel free. But within this philosophy, one of the core principles is it's not what you do, it's what you do it for that matters. The action, there is no virtue, there is no unrighteousness in the action. There is no such thing within this philosophy of you killed someone, that's non-virtuous. Maybe you're saving a family of 5. So the action has nothing to do with whether it is right action or wrong action. It has to do with what are you doing it for? Are you doing it for yourself? Are you killing someone because you're stealing their wallet? Or are you killing somebody, putting yourself in harm's way? Maybe putting yourself in a situation where you might die as well, so that you're in service of someone else. So that means that no one can know whether you're being selfish, unselfish, or selfless in your action. No one can know. I could be up here talking about philosophy solely for prestige of people listening to me talk. As non-virtuous, as much of a vice as robbing someone to steal their money. I'm just doing it with prestige and trying to steal attention. Someone could be on the street, as the story goes, giving the 2 coins, and as the story goes, giving more than anyone that was throwing money into the pot because it was all they had. So that means that it's completely an inner audit of what am I doing this for? And by God, are we filled with delusions of, I'm doing this for the right reasons. And maybe you are. Maybe you're not. Yeah, right there. Hi, Zoe.
As the founder of Magic Mind, I'm just curious how you balance the intensity needed to scale a company, but also kind of align with this Vedanic practice of non-attachment and like how you can keep your ego in check but also be focused on outcomes, obviously, too.
That's a great question, Zoe. I should let my wife answer it because she would give. That way you would know that it's not me just spewing something that sounds good. But within running Magic Mind, it's so interesting. This philosophy, it is because it's so complete. It informs how I floss my teeth. It informs how I clip my fingernails, take care of myself. It informs the conversation and the approach, the attitude with a coworker, and specifically within Magic Mind. The background on it is I had a heart condition from drinking 6 to 7 cups of coffee a day, and running my last company sends me to the ER with a heart condition. They have to use those metal paddles in the movies and TV shows to do what's called a cardioversion to shock my heart back in a rhythm at 26, because I was under the impression that I need to outwork everybody. 7 days a week, 14 hours a day, missing weddings, birthdays, barely having a life, becoming a shade of myself. My wife was there for that too. Becoming a fraction of myself, run into the ground, so overwhelmed and burnt out because I was under this very strong impression. It's out there. I just got to work harder. By the way, that is the romantic philosophy that no philosopher worth their salt still academically takes the romantic philosophy seriously any longer, but it still has made its way into every book, every mainstream movie, not every, but most of them. Nearly every TV show is this romantic philosophy that isn't about just about finding a significant other, although that's part of it. It's the romantic philosophy can be summed up in, through will to power, I can get to the top of that mountain and conquer it by wanting it enough. And if I'm not there, I need to want it more. Not only the philosophers in the West have kind of like been like, I don't think that's it. The philosophers in the East are like, that's the exact opposite of how to get what you want. It's not through wanting it more, it's having a healthy detachment to it. So with Magic Mind, I recognize, man, I'm like drinking 5, then 6, then 7 cups of coffee, chugging ambition, liquid ambition to get more, get more, get more. And I was pushing everything away. Then luckily get this heart condition where the doctor says, with your condition, you can't have more than half a cup of coffee a day. And I was like, my addictive brain was like, there's no effing way I can get through get through a day on half a cup of coffee. But because of that constraint, thinking like, I'm going to be ashamed of myself. I was already ashamed of myself. With half a cup of coffee, it was a reset. And instead of stimulants trying to like jack me up to go get more, get more, get more, I had a whole lot more presence, a whole lot more clarity. And half of the ingredients in Magic Mind actually decrease stress and anxiety so that we can have more clarity and presence when we're making our decisions. And I'll mention three interesting things about what happened in this discovery of this. There's no like formula like Magic Mind out there because half the ingredients decrease stress and anxiety. And when we chug caffeine, it spikes our cortisol, it spikes our stress and anxiety. And the primary cause of procrastination is actually, it's not fatigue, it's not lack of motivation, which we think it is. It's actually low-grade pervasive stress and anxiety. And when I was drinking that 6th and 7th cup of coffee, I was making the problem worse, thinking, oh, this is going to help me get through that next to-do list item, not knowing it was the very thing that was going to be the frickin' concrete wall stopping me from getting to the one after that. That was my life in a nutshell. I thought I was doing all of the things that was getting me closer to my goals and pushing myself. I was just stacking up sandbags 100 feet high, blocking me from getting to where I wanted to be, which was peace and prosperity. And both of them, not one or the other. That's what this philosophy says, by the way, that we all want. It's peace and prosperity. Not peace without prosperity, because it's not going to last very long if you're worried about the bills. Not prosperity without peace, because what is $10 billion if you are living with inner turmoil, agitation, can't sleep at night? So in thinking about this reorientation around productivity, flow state, my ideal state, recognizing, oh my God, instead of like more stimulants, when I take these other ingredients, along with that half a cup, so a little caffeine ain't bad. But when I take these other things, God, I just kind of like glide through the day. And in 2014, there was this landmark study that showed turmeric is as effective as Prozac in improving mood. There just isn't. And I'll say why this is so interesting philosophically. There just isn't a $600 million marketing machine behind turmeric like there is with Prozac. And it's been shown, it's been replicated, that's been replicated subsequent times, multiple times since 2014, as effective. Turmeric, which is in 95% of Indian dishes, as effective as Prozac, with none of the side effects. Rhodiola rosea in 2009, a landmark study was shown to be as effective as low-dose Adderall for focus and for alertness. It's an herb that costs like $2 a pound and doesn't have a marketing machine behind it. But it's sitting there, and you can order that on Amazon and have it delivered the next day. No prescription needed. Adderall has been shown in the last 2 years to have synaptic toxicity, to destroy the synaptic connections in our brain over time. And so there's quite the cost to that pharmaceutical decision. And the last one I'll say is in 2012, ashwagandha was shown to be as effective as Xanax in combating stress and anxiety. Another free herb, well, not free, another easy to order, very inexpensive herb, on par with the leading benzodiazepine prescriptions here in the U.S. And all three of them are in Magic Mind. You get basically the three, you get at appropriate dosages of Prozac, turmeric, you've got ashwagandha and Xanax, and Rhodiola and Adderall, and a shot of Magic Mind. And what does all of this philosophically mean? Our lives. One, the solutions might be at arm's length instead of some like big thing that the world is selling you is going to be some solution. Maybe it's actually just sitting right around us. We're not paying attention to it because, like I said, 3,000 advertisements, no matter what mental fortitude you might think you have, not many of us can really push back 3,000 advertisements telling us it's like, it's all on this or this or this. This is the secret to our, the lack of happiness in our lives. But the other philosophical aspect is maybe it's not in more, like more caffeine, more stimulate, getting more. With Magic Mind, it was actually like, God, software businesses, that's how you like build massive businesses. A beverage company is going to be probably pretty small, but it was a surrender. And I mentioned this, we mentioned this last month. It was a surrender into, I have this little formula out of my kitchen that people seem to love. I built software businesses, but okay, I guess I'm going to surrender into a beverage company. It's so hard. Like energy drinks and beverage companies, they're so freaking hard. So much harder, and you don't have the scale efficiency or kind of the defensibility of software. But what is so crazy is that a surrender into that, and now Magic Mind is at about 50 million in revenue, and it is 100 times bigger than anything I've ever done in software. With 1/100th the stress. So 1% of the stress. I don't think I've ever woken up in the middle of the night worried about Magic Mind. And I woke up pretty much every morning in prior lives worried and running my last companies. And so that surrender, there's a line in the 18th chapter of the Gita. Sorry, there's a long-winded answer, but it's what we do is an extension of what we believe. And there's a line in the 18th chapter of the Gita that says, a principle that says, surrender to a duty-bound existence and immediate peace follows. And I remember reading that for the first 16, 17, 18 times. I was like, that sounds good, but probably not. And I read it the 19th time, and I was like, surrender to a duty-bound existence and immediate peace follows. Well, I know I don't have peace right now. Maybe I should try the thing I haven't tried yet. Surrender into duty instead of jumping after what I want and trying to get more. Okay, one last question, then we'll end it here. Yeah, Cerise. Sorry if I haven't gotten over to this side much. Apologies.
I have, a lot of guilt around ambition and desires, even though a lot of what I do is in service of others, but because there's still always a selfish aspect within that. And I'm just curious, because I'm learning a little about this philosophy, and is the idea that you start in selfishness, progress through to unselfishness, and then the selflessness? Or is it the fact that all three need to exist simultaneously in order for you to reach wherever you need to go?
Yeah. This philosophy makes space for every emotion. There's no, man. Yeah, it's always hard for these words to come out. But this philosophy is very clear in that it says there is no wrong emotion. The significance of that statement is like a grenade that gets planted and then goes off continually. At least for myself when I first heard that. There is no wrong emotion. That is very different than a world I grew up in. But to the practicality of that question, and guilt, there is no regret. There is no value for regret. It's something we might feel. It's not wrong. Guilt, there is nothing wrong with feeling it, but there's not much value in it. It's not much nutritional value. Having some ice cream, this Swami friggin' loves chocolate ice cream. I love vanilla ice cream. Ice cream's great, but there's no real nutritional value in it. There's some value to celebrate, an occasion, have some ice cream, and there's nothing wrong with it. But there's nothing wrong with having guilt, but it is perhaps a signal. Take stock of maybe there's something here that isn't very pure in this service, that is for me. But there's nothing wrong with that feeling, and this philosophy says quite explicitly, utilize that selfishness, just attached to the higher. It's often said, Swami will say it's like a pole vaulter pole vaulting. You can't cross the bar with the pole, but you can't cross the bar without the pole. Use that selfishness to say, all right, well, I feel this agitation eat away at me a little bit when I kind of weave in my own selfishness in this act of service. And I feel better when I don't, when I kind of just relinquish, what am I going to get out of it? Utilize that, hook onto the higher, like climbing a ladder, hook onto that higher of like, okay, let me do a little less selfishness. Let me do a little bit more of this like complete self-obliviousness. I don't think I'm going to get anything out of this. Then you recognize through experience, like, whoa, that actually felt even better. I didn't have that guilt. I didn't have that sense of selfishness, which any sense of selfishness will lead to agitation, according to this philosophy. It will lead to agitation. It's not like there's a chance. It will lead to agitation, any sense of selfishness. So you hook onto, like climbing a ladder, you let go of the lower by attaching to the higher. So attach to subsequent little baby steps, perhaps, but higher and higher ideals. And maybe it's like, all right, now I'm going to serve this person. I don't know how I'm going to cover rent through this act of service. In fact, that's going to become a big question mark when I give this away, or when I take this other job. Will I be able to still live in this great neighborhood? I don't know. But surrender to a duty-bound existence and immediate peace follows. Try that on smaller scales, and it's inevitable. You'll see it's true. So utilize the pole, the selfishness. A selfish pursuit. Seeking enlightenment, the first few stages, extremely selfish. After like 3 or 4 years of studying this philosophy daily, I was like, oh my God, I'm just seeing this pursuit of enlightenment as like a spiritual little escape pod from all this suffering down here. And I'm just like individually, selfishly trying to get away from it all. And I remember asking Swami about that. And he was like, use it. Use that selfishness. But also recognize, oh God, the less, when I'm pointing towards the higher, the less that I use it, the better I end up feeling. Yeah. Okay, well, with that, we'll end it here. But thank you all for coming. Thank you for starting the Friday with us. And feel free to come up and ask us any questions. We'll be here for another 10 minutes or so. So feel free to come up and say hi. Thanks, y'all.